Here we are on Bhagavad-Gita 5:2. Sannyasa karma yogascha. Is that the tune? Okay. Shri Bhagavan Vacha. Sannyasa karma yogascha. Nishayasya tadabhubhao. Tayastu karma sannyasat. Karma yoga vivishyate. Shri Bhagavan Vacha. Sannyasa karma yogascha. Nishayasya karabhubhao. Tayostu karma sannyasat. Karma yoga vivishyate. Okay. Shri Bhagavan Vacha. Sannyasya karma yogascha. Nishayasya karabhubhao. Tayasto tu karma sannyasat. Karma yoga vivishyate. Shri Bhagavan Vacha. Sannyasya karma yogascha. Nishayasya karabhubhao. Tayastu kumar sannyasat. Karma yoga vivishyate. Shri Bhagavan Vacha. Sannyasa karma yogascha. Nishayasya karabhubhao. Tayastu karma sannyasat. Karma yoga vivishyate. That's an even nicer tune. Okay, anybody else? And actually, there's not very many people here. Why doesn't everybody try? Sannyasya karma yogascha. Nishayasya karabhubhao. Tayastu karma sannyasat. Karma yoga vivishyate. There's more people. Shri Bhagavan Vacha. Sannyasa karma yogascha. Nishayasya karabhubhao. Tayastu karma sannyasa. Karma yoga vivishyate. Shri Bhagavan Vacha. Sannyasa karma yogascha. Nishayasya karabhubhao. Tayastu karma sannyasa. Karma yoga vivishyate. Shri Bhagavan Vacha. Sannyasa karma yogascha. Nishayasya karabhubhao. Tayastu karma sannyasat. Karma yoga vivishyate. Shri Bhagavan Vacha. Sannyasa karma yogascha. Tayastu karma sannyasa. Karma yoga vivishyate. Okay, did everybody do it? Everybody? Okay, they're very nice. When I was in Hawaii, long time ago, maybe this was 1972 or something. Anyway, we were chanting Bhagavad-Gita. And we were chanting the entire 7th chapter. And then we got that memorized, and then we went on to the 7th and 8th chapter. We started because Prabhupada had said that the first 6 chapters are like the cover of the book, the last 6 chapters. So we were going to do the inside of the book. And so we were chanting the Sanskrit. And then Prabhupada, I think he came to Hawaii and he heard that we were chanting. And he liked that very much. And then after that, he went to LA, and that's when they started chanting the Sanskrit shlokas. And so in our classes, we were also chanting the shlokas for the, must have been Srimad Bhagavatam, and also Bhagavad-Gita. Anyway, we would chant the shlokas. But there was a rule that everybody, if they were initiated, they had to chant the shlokas, no matter what. So it helped everybody to kind of like, it was just the rule. You had to do it whether you had a good voice or not, or whether you were shy or not. It was just something accepted. Sorry, we have to read the word for word. Okay. Sri Bhagavan Vacha. The personality of Godhead said, Sannyasaha, renunciation of work, Karma yogaha, work in devotion, Cha, also, Nishayasya karao, leading to the path of liberation, Ubao, Bo, Tayaho, of the two, but karma sannyasa, in comparison to the renunciation of fruitive work, karma yoga, work in devotion, vivishyate, is better. Translation. The personality of Godhead replied, the renunciation of work and work in devotion are both good for liberation. That's Nrishreya Yasakaro. Okay, the renunciation of work and work in devotion are both good for liberation, but of the two, work in devotional service is better than renunciation of work. So, do you folks all say this also? Okay. So everybody together. The personality of Godhead, replied. Oh, am I supposed to say it and then you say it? Oh, okay. The renunciation of work and work in devotion are both good for liberation. But of the two, work in devotional service is better than renunciation of work. Okay. All right. Now, purport. Fruitive activities, which are seeking sense gratification, or cause for material bondage. As long as one is engaged in activities aimed at improving the standard of bodily comfort, one is sure to migrate to different types of bodies, thereby continuing material bondage perpetually. Srimad Bhagavatam 5th canto, chapter 5, 4-6, confirms this as follows. Now, who knows where this is? The 5th canto, chapter 5. Anybody? Oh yeah, it's King Rishabdev. It's the teachings of King Rishabdev. That's right. Yeah. Okay. People are mad after sense gratification, and they do not know that this present body, which is full of miseries, is a result of one's fruitive activities in the past. Although this body is temporary, it is always giving one trouble in many ways. Therefore, to act for sense gratification is not good. One is considered to be a failure in life as long as he makes no inquiry about his real identity. As long as he does not know his real identity, he has to work for fruitive results, for sense gratification. And as long as one is engrossed in the consciousness of sense gratification, one has to transmigrate from one body to another. Although the mind may be engrossed in fruitive activities and influenced by ignorance, one must develop a love for devotional service to Vasudeva. Oh, I know. In this verse, in Rishabdev's teachings, he says, service to Vasudeva, which is me. Only then can one have the opportunity to get out of the bondage of material existence. Therefore, Gyan, or knowledge that one is not this material body but spirit soul, is not sufficient for liberation. One has to act in the status of spirit soul. Otherwise, there is no escape from material bondage. Action in Krishna consciousness is not, however, action on the fruitive platform. Activities performed in full knowledge strengthens one's advancement in real knowledge. Without Krishna consciousness, mere renunciation of fruitive activities does not actually purify the heart of a conditioned soul. As long as the heart is not purified, one has to work on the fruitive platform. But action in Krishna consciousness automatically helps one escape the result of fruitive action, so one need not descend to the material platform. Therefore, action in Krishna consciousness is always superior to renunciation, which always entails a risk of falling. Renunciation without Krishna consciousness is incomplete, as confirmed by Srila Rupa Goswami in his Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. When persons eager to achieve liberation renounce things related to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, thinking of them to be material, their renunciation is called incomplete. Actually, this is the Falgu Vairagya, Rupa Goswami. Renunciation is complete when it is in the knowledge that everything is in existence belongs to the Lord, and that no one should claim proprietorship over anything. One should understand that factually nothing belongs to anyone. Then where's the question of renunciation? One who knows that everything is Krishna's property is always situated in renunciation. Since everything belongs to Krishna, everything should be employed in the service of Krishna. This perfect form of action in Krishna consciousness is far better than any amount of artificial renunciation by a sannyasi of the Mayavadi school. Right. Okay. Actually, I have to say that Keshi Damana Prabhu was supposed to give the class today, And Parvati Mataji, she asked me, and she only asked me as a very last ditch kind of thing, because I don't have much experience. And I'm sure all of you know Bhagavad-Gita a lot better than I do. Especially, I heard that what's her name? Yashoda gave a really nice class, an overview. So you have that in your hat. But I have the advantage of, for the last 2 hours, reading with verses constantly. And I think this is a really interesting verse. It's a famous verse, and it's famous because this is the Bhagavad-Gita Vantasi verse, and I mean the Vantasi verse is really in Srimad Bhagavatam. But however, this is used also as an example. But we'll get to that. And also, it's really interesting. To me, it's so wonderful when I study Prabhupada's books to see how Prabhupada has drawn on the commentaries of the Vaishnavacharyas. For me, it's thrilling to see. There's so many examples of this, because Prabhupada doesn't mention, Jiva Goswami says this, or Vishwanath Chakravarti says this, Bhaktivinoda. He doesn't mention that in his purports, but when he gives the purports, he's giving this the same as they have given. In our line, we encourage plagiarism. It's a devotional principle. So. This is chapter 5, and this is only the second verse of chapter 5. Karma Yoga, Action in Krishna Consciousness. Now this is interesting because the Sanskrit is Karma Sannyas Yoga, which means yoga through renunciation of action. So Karma Sannyas Yoga, yoga through renunciation of action. And Prabhupada has called it Karma Yoga, Action in Krishna Consciousness. So Prabhupada has this very particular perspective, which is brought out in this verse. So I'm going to just give you a little review, because the verses. Do you know what Purva Paksha is? Everybody? Does anybody know what Purva Paksha is? It's a standard a way of commentary of all the Vaishnavacharyas. It was like a standard grammatical form in those days. And they all followed it. Purva Paksha is basically like a question and an answer, or a challenge and a rebuttal kind of format. So all the commentaries follow this, but the reason they follow it is to explicate the verses. So each verse, there's like Purva Paksha brings out the psychology. Because Arjuna might ask, well, what about this? Therefore, Krishna says, da-da-da-da. And because Arjuna might then say, well, that doesn't make sense. What about this? Therefore, Krishna uses this word, tatpadartha, or whatever, like that. So it's like this. It goes into the logic of the verse, the back and forth. So this verse, number 2, has come from number 1. And so just going to go over number 1. So Krishna, in the number 1, Krishna says, first, can you tell me to renounce work? Then you tell me to work with devotion. selflessly offering, which is better. So this is what the first one is. And the 5th chapter is going to say that work in devotional service is better than dry mental speculation. And because it's easier and it frees one from reaction. Now, then Prabhupada talks about, and I have to say, Prabhupada talks about what is chapter 2, chapter 3, chapter 4. This that Prabhupada mentions, this is exactly what Bhaktivinoda Thakur says. So chapter 2 is the preliminary knowledge of the soul and the material body. Chapter 3 is a person on the platform of knowledge, has no duties to perform. Chapter 4, all kinds of sacrificial work culminate in knowledge. So all kinds of sacrificial work culminate in knowledge. So the last chapter is Jnana Yoga. But he ends with, everything culminates in Jnana. But he ends with a call to action. At the very end of the 4th chapter, says, stand and fight. So karma, here, karma has been described as superior to Jnana. No, usually Jnana is superior to karma. But here, karma is superior to Jnana. Why? To encourage ignorant people to perform their prescribed duty and to ultimately achieve perfection. And we'll go into that more, why Krishna is promoting Nishkam Karma Yoga as superior to Jnana Yoga here. So Arjuna is thinking, meanwhile, whoa, Krishna said he said both work in devotion and inaction in knowledge. Krishna, in the 4th chapter, Krishna has recommended inaction in knowledge, and then he recommends work in devotion. So this is confusing. Renunciation in knowledge is this sannyas, and it involves cessation of work as a sense activity. But if one works in devotion, so you're supposed to, your work is supposed to cease. But if you work in devotion, you're working, right? So how is this? It seems to be a contradiction. So he's thinking that sannyas, or renunciation in knowledge, and work, the idea of renunciation and work, they're incompatible. And so then this is the reason he's asking verse number 2, which is our verse. And Prabhupada answers the question, but full knowledge is non-reactive and the same as inaction. So anyway, this comes to our verse. And Prabhupada says, renunciation of work and work in devotion are both good for liberation. But karma yoga, and here the word is actually technically nishkam karma yoga. It's selflessly offering the fruit of one's prescribed duties. Okay, is better than karma sannyas. And worshiping the Lord by selflessly offering him the fruit of one's prescribed duties is superior to renouncing one's prescribed duties. Now, it should be understood that the word karma yoga is not the same thing as karma kanda. What is karma? In this case here, as we're discussing it, actions prescribed in the scriptures are karma. And when the jiva engages in such activities, thinking himself as the doer, this is called karma kanda. These are pious activities, but in spite of being pious activities, they still bind one to the material world. They don't lead to one's union with the Supreme. So this is the purpose of karma yoga. This yoga, or the union with Krishna, is karma yoga. Only by selflessly offering the fruits of one's action can yoga with Krishna, with the Supreme Lord, be established. So this is called Nishkam Karma Yoga. It is without any kam, without any ulterior desires. And Nishkam Karma Yoga is like an abhas of Bhagavad Dharma. It is not exactly bhakti. It is the gateway to bhakti. It is an indirect connection to the Lord, but still it's there. You know, it's a gateway to go in. So this is a process. So fruitive activities cause bondage that makes one's transmigrate from body to body. And Prabhupada quotes the Srimad Bhagavatam verse from the teachings of Lord Rishabhdev. And the verse ends with, although the mind may be engrossed in fruitive activities and influenced by ignorance, one must develop love for devotional service to Vasudeva. Only then can one have the opportunity to get out of the bondage of material existence. And then, this is interesting. The next line says, therefore, Gyan is knowledge that you're not this body, is not sufficient for liberation. Now the question is, why therefore? Prabhupada has just said, he's talking about as long as one is engaged in material activities, one is sure to transmigrate, etc., etc., and the verse backs that up. And then he says, therefore, Gyan is not sufficient for liberation. So how does Prabhupada get to therefore? What has Prabhupada said that makes us conclude that Gyan is not sufficient for liberation in this verse? Now I'm asking you this, expecting somebody to come up with an answer. Does anybody want to venture something? I thought about it too. I mean, it caught me and I had to think about it. That's why I'm asking you guys. It's a really interesting point. Okay, give up? Okay, yes?
I also thought that, and reading the scripture before. I think the sentence is that one must develop love for the devotional service of others. So that's not going to come out of the Gita.
Yeah, that was the same thing that I thought of also. Because the last sentence is, as she said, one must develop love for devotional service to Vasudeva. And then one can have the opportunity to get out of bondage of material existence. Because what is Gyan? Gyan is the desire. Ultimately, the desire of Gyan is to get out of the bondage of material existence. Okay? Gyan or knowledge brings you to something negative. It cannot bring you to something positive. You all know that. You understand how Gyan cannot take you to positive transcendence. There's that famous, I used this before, the Rasgula example. The Nyaya Rasgula example, I think I've said this before. Does everybody, okay. All right, this is Nyaya. We're talking about eternality in Nyaya. How does Nyaya understand eternality? There are two examples. Two words, anadi, which is Anadi means that which has no beginning, but it has an end. Ananta, that which has no end, but it has a beginning. Okay, the rasgulla example. You eat a rasgulla. The non-existence of that rasgulla has begun. And it will go on forever. It'll be non-existent forever because you ate it. The other one. You make a rasgulla. The non-existence of that rasgulla has come to an end. This is anadi. The non-existence of the rasgulla has come to an end. It was non-existent forever, but you made it, so it's come to an end. And the other one is the non-existence will go on forever after eating it. Now you notice that both of these deal with non-existence because we're dealing with eternality. There is no material example for eternality. There is no way you can have a material example for something transcendental. It doesn't go there. You can only go there in the negative. So, in that way, Gyan can take you to the understanding that you're not this body, to the understanding the highest point of Gyan is liberation, which is negative. It's not positive. But it can't take you to something positive. And so, anyway, this is okay. So, this is why Gyan is not sufficient for liberation. Therefore, because there's no love in it, this is why Gyan is not sufficient for liberation. There is no devotion. So one has to act like as a spirit. Prabhupada, the next point that Prabhupada makes is one has to act as a spirit soul. Otherwise, there's no escape from material bondage. And then, what is this acting as a spirit soul? What? Devotional service. There's a beautiful part that Prabhupada dedicates to acting as a spirit soul here. So this is the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, or the Prabhupada's Introduction to the Nectar of Devotion. And bhakti means devotional service. Every service has some feature which drives the servitor progressively on and on. Every one of us in this world is perpetually engaged in some sort of service, and the impetus for such service is the pleasure we derive from it. Driven by affection for his wife and children, a family man works day and night. A philanthropist works in the same way for the love of the greater family, and a nationalist for the cause of the country and countrymen. That force which drives the philosopher, the householder, and the nationalist is called a ras, or a kind of mellow whose taste is very sweet. And then Prabhupada says, when the purified senses are employed in the service of the Lord, one becomes situated in bhakti ras life, and any action performed for the satisfaction of Krishna in this transcendental bhakti ras stage of life can be relished perpetually. When one is thus engaged in devotional service, all varieties of ras, or mellows, turn into eternity. The basic principle of the living condition is we have a general propensity to love someone. No one can live without loving someone else. This propensity is present in every living being. Even an animal like a tiger has a loving propensity in a dormant stage, and it is certainly present in the human beings. The missing point, however, is where to repose our love so that everyone can become happy. Anyway, I'm just reading parts of this. The Prabhupada's introduction to the Nectar of Devotion is sublime. It is one of the most beautiful things that Prabhupada has written, I think. And it answers this question, how to act as a spirit soul. What is the nature of the soul? You know, the nature of the soul is that the soul has a propensity to love. And based on our identification as our bodies or not our bodies, if we identify as the spirit soul, we understand that we love the Supreme Soul, that's Krishna. And therefore we become satisfied and happy. Otherwise, we're going to love somebody. And in this world, everybody is working on that principle. But if we want to get out, we have to understand what is our true nature and where to repose that love. So this is acting as a spirit soul. So what does action in Krishna consciousness mean? Prabhupada is speaking like this. Action in Krishna consciousness purifies the heart, so there is no fall down. This is an important part. So there's no fall down. In renunciation, there's always a risk of falling. So the key word here is the heart, purifying the heart. And this, what Prabhupada is saying here, and then a little bit further down, is like an indirect reference to what Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur has said and what Bhaktivinoda Thakur has said. They are speaking about, Vishwanath says, if someone is a karma sannyasi and is experiencing disturbance at heart, is he forbidden to engage in karma to mitigate it? So, the implied answer, this is like Arjun's question, kind of. Because, like I said, it's back to being Purva Paksha. The implied answer that Krishna is answering this question in the verse. And Krishna doesn't say yes or no, but the implication is yes. For a karma sannyasi or a renunciate, such a disturbance is an obstacle in the cultivation of transcendental knowledge. One who accepts sense objects, having previously given them up, becomes a vantasi, one who eats his own vomit. And therefore, Krishna says in this verse here, work in devotional service is superior. Why? Because action in Krishna consciousness, as Prabhupada says, it purifies the heart. When the heart is purified, there's no fall down. And in renunciation, there is always a risk of falling. And therefore, Nishkam Karma Yoga, in that way, is superior to Karma Sannyas. Then, there's another point that Prabhupada makes. What does action in Krishna consciousness mean? So Prabhupada takes it in another direction by this verse of Rupa Goswami. When persons eager to achieve liberation renounce things related to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, thinking them to be material, their renunciation is called incomplete, or Falgu Vairagya. And so Prabhupada makes the point that everything belongs to Krishna, and everything should be used in Krishna's service. And there's no question of renunciation for somebody that realizes that everything is for Krishna. there is nothing that cannot. There's one of the acharyas, he made the point, the environment is always favorable. Everything is given to us by Krishna. No. Everything that happens, Krishna has put it there for us to learn from it, for us to use it in his service. And so Prabhupada says, one should know everything is Krishna's property, and one who knows that is situated in renunciation. Everything should be employed in service of Krishna. This perfect form of action in Krishna consciousness is far better than any amount of artificial renunciation by a sannyasi of the Mayavad school. So that's the karma sannyas. So that's all I had prepared. Does anybody have anything to add? Or you have any questions? Oh, yes? I'll tell you something Jayapataka Maharaj said about questioning. He said, he was in I guess he told me this. We were talking about Montreal. So Jayapataka Maharaj became a devotee in Montreal. And he said that he noticed Govinda Dasi really liked him as a young man. She was Prabhupada's servant at the time, and she would ask him to help serve Prabhupada because he was always such a responsible person. And he's a brand new devotee at the time. And so he said that he would go to Prabhupada's lectures, and he noticed that Prabhupada liked questions. And so he would, during the time Prabhupada is giving a lecture, he'd be thinking of questions. He'd try to think of a real good question. And then at the end, when Prabhupada asked for questions, he would raise his hands and he would have so he'd be really listening carefully to the lecture and then trying to think of a good question and then he would raise his hand and Prabhupada would call on him and he would ask his question. And he said that pleased Prabhupada. So anyway, please.
Hare Krishna, that's a nice class method. I want to ask one thing. There are two things we are discussing. The renunciation of work and devotion. Two important things. As you know, asking this question, which is best. So in our daily, day-to-day, in our activities, in the temple or in our Krishna consciousness, we are doing different kind of service. For example, put it both in an example which I can understand. In an example.
Put what in an example?
Suppose.
Oh, what's an example of renunciation of work?
Yes. Renunciation of work means one example. Work in devotion in example.
Well, wow, that's interesting. I mean, as far as work and devotion goes, we're all, but try to understand that this is Nishkam Karma Yoga. That work that is selflessly offered to Krishna. So in this case, Nishkam Karma Yoga, or work in devotion, we're talking here, pure devotion, is something that we are aspiring for. And we're offering the fruits of our work to Krishna. But to be actually Nishkam, that's a tall order. And something that personally I'm aspiring for. So now I'm thinking of Anyabhilashita Sunyam Jnana Karmadhyanabritam, and that verse, because that's an example of Uttama Bhakti. But Prabhupada says that this Nishkam Karma Yoga is like the stage before, because you actually don't have the, you would be having the Anyabhilashita Sunyam Jnana, the Jnana Karmadhyanabritam part, but the Anukuyena Krishnanukshilana, that part is yet to begin at the point of Nishkam Karma Yoga. But it could be applied to anything, as long as one is selflessly offering it. So that's Nishkam Karma Yoga. How's that? And karma sannyas. Prabhupada translates it as renunciation of work. And let's see. I don't feel qualified to talk about it because I haven't studied the previous chapter in which it is talked about. Would anybody else like to comment on his question in regards to karma sannyas or Jnana Yoga? Because this is the previous chapter of Jnana Yoga, and how would it be applicable to us? It's the renunciation. It's not just being a sannyasi. We're talking about karma sannyas also. It's the renunciation of karma. Or would anybody like to comment on what he was saying? Example of in our life now of Jnana Yoga and karma sannyas. Yes? Renunciation of work.
I probably have studied karma sannyas and what to work in devotion. There are two activities what we were discussing here. Now, especially a man who is in Grastha ashram, there are 4 ashrams, and in case he is in Grastha ashram and he has not been prescribed, he has been performing the prescribed duty, and he has just been renouncing the work, thinking into the frustration of the work, and he goes to take the sannyas, and he has not been doing the activity. He becomes sannyas. And in case the work he has been doing in relation to the consciousness for the pleasure of the Krishna, for the pleasure of the Supreme Lord, anything he is in preparation and he just put it into the in the service of Supreme Lord. That is called work in devotion. These are the 2 activities what he is doing.
What would be a practical example of?
This is the practical example.
Of somebody taking sannyas.
Grastha leaves his work. He just desert his family, desert his children. He don't care for the family uplift to make them what will say उनको पालने का जो है maintenance, he is not thinking for the maintenance, he just been thinking to be a frustration in the work.
I see.
It's a frustration, okay, he just leave the work and he is not been performing the duties prescribed in the scriptures for a Grastha ashram. It means he is renouncing the work for the sake of his frustration, for his pleasure, for the sense gratifications. It is another. example for this, work in renunciation.
Yes.
The renunciation out of frustration is in the 18th chapter, how that's renunciation in the mode of passion. But what I was going to say was that actually in chapter 4, on transcendental knowledge, Krishna is not actually telling us to take up jnana. Although he's saying that all these activities result in knowledge, he concludes by saying, therefore fight. And even when he's describing in a jnani way what is action, what is inaction, and things like that, he's still telling us the same thing, this Nishkam Karma Yoga, that actually inaction is acting without the attachment, is acting for Krishna. So actually I don't see that in the 4th chapter he's actually advising renunciation. One example of renunciation is Hari Ram Prabhu gave in this morning's class about this devotee in Mayapur who went to Prabhupada and said, no, I want to sit in a tree and chant. And he persisted so much that Prabhupada allowed him to. And he only lasted 2 weeks and then he left the movement and was never seen again. Because he got this small piece of knowledge, I'm spirit soul, I'm not the body, therefore why should I do anything? So this is what Prabhupada is calling, this false renunciation. We give up our activities, but we're not actually following the guidance of the spiritual master. Prabhupada was trying to engage him in devotional service for his own benefit, but he insisted, no, I want to chant. Prabhupada allowed him, and the proof was there. The result showed that this artificial renunciation was not helpful at all.
Well, since you brought that up, I'll just end on this note because it's connected to what you said, but it's maybe not connected to your question. But since you mentioned Hari Ram, it reminded me of Hari Nam. I have a godbrother who's now in the hospice. His name is Hari Nam Prabhu. He comes from Mangalartik, maybe you've seen. He's not exactly dying even though he's in the hospice. But he has severe Parkinson's disease. You know, Parkinson's makes you shake. So he needs care, special care. So that's why he's in the hospice. Anyway, I knew Harinam many years ago. He came through Iran when I was there. And he was there, I don't think he was there very long. I don't have that, I can't remember that much. In fact, I had forgotten him altogether till I saw him. So, but anyway, we were talking about Iran. He was staying in Tehran for a little while. And he said why he went to Iran. Now, I was there with the Trey Rishi and a few other devotees, and Prabhupada had sent us there, so we had a center. But Harinam was here in India, and he was in the Delhi temple. And then Prabhupada came, and Prabhupada was, Harinam had been in Vrindavan for some time, but he was doing service in Delhi. And he had decided that he wanted to follow in the footsteps of the 6 Goswamis. And so he was chanting 64 rounds a day. And Prabhupada came to Delhi, and Prabhupada was giving a lecture. And he said, even though Harinam had not told him that he was chanting 64 rounds a day, but Prabhupada, in his lecture, he said, you cannot become like Rupa Goswami by chanting. We want to become like Rupa Goswami. We're Rupa Nugas. But you cannot become like Rupa Goswami by chanting. He says, you have to preach. And if you preach, then you can chant. And so at that point, Harinam was thinking, wow, Prabhupada is talking to me. So he decided to go out and preach, and the place he thought of was Tehran. And so that's how he traveled overland, I think, through Pakistan, through Afghanistan. It was much safer in those days. And then he ended up in Tehran. And he was attempting to preach there. So, but anyway, he was taking to heart what Srila Prabhupada had said. So anyway, so thank you very much. Sancha Kalpa Churvyasra Kripa Sindhya Patitanam Bhavanidya